All right. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Rock, retired combat vet, and this is episode number 3 of the Actions on the Objective podcast. On this show, I talk with other combat vets and we discuss their experiences inside the battle space. We cover everything from the mundane to kinetic engagements with the enemy. And we have a special guest today inside the Objective Rally Point, a guy I had the privilege of serving with, Carl Workman. We actually got to chew some dirt together in Iraq in 2004 and 2005, where he was actually wounded by an IED. During his time in service, he was a fire direction control specialist in the Army and deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, right?
Correct.
Yep. And today he's here to tell us about his actions on the objectives. Welcome, brother.
Hey, how's it going, man? How's it going?
Good. Thanks for coming on and talking with me today.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be here.
We'll do like we always do on this show. We'll start back at the beginning. And so who was Carl before he joined the Army? Who was Carl during high school years?
Man, I don't know how you're censored or whatnot. But,
no censors here.
Before the military, Carl Workman was just a little shit ass. Get away with anything he could. But I like to think that I've always been a decent and respectable person, but there was a lot of misfit and whatnot, I guess like your average small town, it's kind of sad to say, but your average little small town nobody, I mean, done what I could, try to keep myself afloat, help my folks out some, but other than that, it was 17, 18-year-old Carl,
And what led you to wanting to join the military?
Yeah, man, honestly, I never even had the urge to join the military, and my parents had tried to talk to me about it, and like I said earlier, Carl, I wasn't hearing it, and unfortunately 9/11 happened, and they had us all in the gym, and it was at that point, I guess, I felt like I grew up 10 years in just a matter of minutes, of course I was old enough to join. And my senior year, I went ahead and talked to a recruiter, and we got everything set up. And I don't know, 2 months after I graduated high school, I was off to basic, man. And that's where it started.
Where'd you go for that? Was it
for basic training?
Yeah, Fort Sill.
Sill, yeah.
Yep, basic and AIT.
Yeah, I was in Alpha 1st 79th. For basic, and then Alpha 2nd 80th for AIT. I was fortunate enough they were just right down the road from each other, so we didn't have to do no flying or bus riding in between.
Yeah. And then after you complete your AIT, you head straight up to Fort Drum.
Oh man, it was a wild trip. After AIT, I was slotted to go to Fort Riley.
Okay.
And I waited, and I was a holdover for, 2 months. And then finally I ended up with orders, and that's when I showed up at Drum in February of 2003.
Okay, February 2003.
Yeah, February of 2003. That's when I got there, and I ended up coming to 215. I was Bravo at first with at the time he was Smoke Hunter and Gunny Bass. First Sergeant East, a couple of our batteries there. We ended up taking that trip up to Fort Indiantown Gap there in Pennsylvania and done some training. That was a good time there. Waking up covered in snow, and just it was the whole embrace the suck for that type of training, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, at the time of Fort Indiantown Gap, I had no idea. Oh, goodness, sorry. I live on post, and every now and then they make them speakers squeal a little bit. But, of course, at the time of Fort Indiantown Gap, we had no idea of what Embrace the Suck was really about to be like.
Absolutely. So then they're about a little over a year later, we end up deploying to Iraq in 2004.
Right. Yeah, I want to say it was about a month before we ended up with the desert camos. I ended up getting promoted, and then word come down that we was getting ready to ship off. So I guess everybody started their hustling and bustling then.
So, yeah, so we get into Iraq, and 2004 in Iraq, that was right around that time, late 2003, 2004, when they started, changing into the insurgency and introducing like IEDs.
Right.
And that's kind of a lot of what we're going to focus on today.
Okay.
There was, between 2003 and 2011, just thousands of IEDs, and they were actually responsible for up to 63% of all U.S. casualties during that time frame. And one in particular, the EFPs, the explosively formed IEDs, which is actually what you got hit with. And they were actually introduced in Iraq by Iranian General Soleimani, which is one reason why I never had a problem with the strike on him here a few years back. He was alone with that IED alone responsible for around an estimated 1,000 U.S. personnel wounded and killed.
Jeez, that's insane.
Yeah, and the IEDs during that time, they were inside. I mean, between the IEDs and the VBIEDs, and they were just all over the place.
Man, and you was talking about them introducing different stuff around about the time we got there. I know one particular incident. We was getting ready. We got off the plane and we had all the trucks packed up, and me and Brian Dial, we had to ride in one of the semis with one of the drivers, and we had radios with Sergeant Scott and Sergeant Jones, but I don't know if we were too far apart or if theirs were turned off or what. But geez, this dude's truck, it wouldn't go over like 40, 45 mile an hour without overheating. So everybody had left us. Dude, we were like, it was intense for us, because we didn't know what all to expect at the time.
Yeah, your first deployment, and
right, everybody had left us. So, and the driver we had, he did not speak English at all. Well, fortunately, we ended up coming to like a checkpoint or something like that, but it was run by I guess the Kuwait police. And we finally ended up getting to tell him we were trying to get to Doha.
mm-hmm.
And he finally told the driver where we were going and how to get there or whatnot. But like 2 hours later, after I think they said it was like 2 hours after you guys or the rest of the guys had got there, we finally showed up. And God, man, we caught so much shit from them. Like they were laughing and cutting up and joking with us. Of course, I mean, there wasn't nothing we could have done about it with the driver. His truck only goes X mile an hour without it overheating.
Yeah.
But that was intense for us because here we are,
brand new,
Joes just running around Kuwait.
Yeah, probably thought you guys were getting kidnapped.
But hey, after we finally got to what was that camp we had to go to acclimate?
Doha. Was that it?
Was it Doha or it was the one after?
It might have been a different one. I'll be honest, I can't even remember.
But I know the one we had to stay at for like a month or something like that. Word started coming down. That's when that's when they started stealing police uniforms and setting up checkpoints and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, we both found out about that, and all we could do was just stare at each other. Like, I mean, that could have been the one in a million, but it just, I don't know, it kind of sending chills down your spine just imagining something like that turning ugly,
Yeah. Yeah, and then from there we did the ground movement up to Baghdad.
Yeah, we had to do the ground movement, but it was wild because we kept getting all these vehicles over to the mechanics and whatnot so they can get them up armored everywhere.
Yeah.
And
yeah, the sandbags on the floor and
right. And I'll be damned if I still didn't end up driving all the way into Iraq in a soft top Humvee.
yeah.
No doors, plastic everywhere. Oh man.
Yeah, it was definitely a different experience those early years in Iraq.
Oh man. I don't know. I'm sure it's not as bad as some people have got worse stories. I'm sure, but for me, like you said, first deployment, I was on edge all the time, man.
yeah.
But we finally made it though.
Yep. Yeah, and then we get up there and we kind of hit the ground running. We did a lot of patrols up there.
Right.
All over the Mansour area and a lot of the western Baghdad area.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a majority of the time I was in the top, so I didn't get to see a whole lot, but eventually my chance came to start rolling out. So
when did you start joining the patrol?
we got there in we got in Iraq probably July, right? Seeing as we had that month acclimation.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to say it was right around. Hey, you know what? It was right before they started doing their first election.
Okay, so right
days
around
before.
So in like around January. That happened at the end of January is when we held the first Democratic election there.
Okay. Yeah, it was just days before that because I remember on the election we done like a 24-hour patrol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Making sure the area was secured for election day. And yeah. Yep.
But so from just days before the election all the way up to May 1st.
Yeah. And that was a huge focus right then too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course I know it was well after, but I remember we went into Fallujah at once, and of course that was months before, but
yeah, spent pretty much that entire deployment just trying to dodge IEDs.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so then we come into. So you joined the patrol in January. We do the elections,
right.
And then aside from the elections too, it's just a lot of presence patrols and a lot of just
Show of
force, and talking to a lot of the locals, getting information.
Right.
And then that leads us to the end of April, beginning of May. And
Jeez Louise.
What's that?
So jeez Louise.
And that's when you get hit with an IED. And
Right.
now I know there's a lot you don't remember. What do you remember about that day?
That's correct. From what I do remember, I want to say we had 3 days in a row that was just sketchy. I remember the first day we had a V-bed go off, not 3 minutes after we got off the Liberty, Victory, whichever you want to call it. I don't even know what it's called now, but we had that V-bed go off, and it was not a funny situation at all. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I remember looking. Of course, we was in the last vehicle, me and Sergeant Major. But I remember looking up to the third vehicle, and do you remember Dirk Hatch?
Yep.
I laughed at him, and he looked back at me, and he said, "Workman, them some bitches tried to kill me."
Was that the one with the engine block, right?
Yeah, the engine block flew right by him.
Yeah, it flew like right over the turret.
But
oh my God.
but yeah, I mean, we all that got cleared up, and I guess we went on about our merry way eventually. And then the second day, man, I don't know if you remember or not, it was a sandbag, and we passed it on the road 2 or 3 times before somebody realized what it was or noticed something about it, and we had to wait on the EOD to blow it.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was day 2, and then of course day 3. I think we were coming back from Anaconda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we were on Route Tampa, right?
It was Tampa or Irish.
Yeah, one of those IED.
I know we ended up. I know Colonel Albanese ended up wanting to take some side road or something, so we got off the main highway there, and just after we got off the highways, when of course I'm looking back, so I didn't see nothing. All I heard over our headsets was Sergeant Major, and from that, all I remember hearing was IE, and then the blast. But the blast, I know it knocked me out for I don't know how long, but about the time the dust was clearing or whatnot, I'd come to. But
yeah,
the legs were all pretzeled up, and my back was up against the radio.
Yeah.
And as awful as it sounds, of course I heard Sergeant Major screaming, and I looked over there, and all I could see was blood, man. The only thing I could think was, like, this dude done got his whole face blown off.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I had done got hit. The shrapnel went through my shoulder and blew it all out, and it ended up hitting a bunch of nerves and whatnot, so I didn't even think my arm was attached. Of course, I mean, I know you remember seeing me in there. I wasn't in shock or nothing. I was just hanging out. Nothing hurt.
Yeah, that was because I remember the IED went off, and then first thing I remember is somebody came on the radio and said Sergeant Major's hit. They didn't say anything about you yet, and so we pull security, get security established. We dismount, and I run back to the back vehicle. And by that time, they already had Sergeant Major out of the vehicle and started bandaging him up. And I happened to look up at the gunner's turret, and I didn't see you up there. And so I actually opened up the Humvee door to yell at you, like, "What the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you pulling security?"
Yeah, you was like, I remember that. You was like, "I can't help you. You got to get out on your own." I was like, "Well, fuck, man."
Yeah. I remember opening the door, and you were just sitting there. Just a pool of blood. And
just hanging out, man.
Yeah. And first thing you said to me was, "I think I'm hit, Sergeant Shetler." I said, "Yeah, buddy, you're hit."
Yeah, like I'm telling you, dude, I couldn't feel my arm. Like nothing else hurt at the time,
Yep. And I remember at one point I kind of grabbed you by your plate carrier to kind of pull you towards the door a little bit, and I saw, and then that's when I really got to see your shoulder. And
yeah, that was intense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I remember too, because I couldn't believe how calm you were. I remember after we got you out, we were kind of getting your kit off and everything, checking for more wounds and trying to get your shoulder bandaged up. And I remember when we were taking off all your equipment, you said, "Don't cut my boots. These are brand new fucking boots."
Dude, I just got them things. They wasn't even broke in. I just got them like 4 or 5 days before this. You know, I've still got those boots, and they are still not cut.
Really?
Really, I fought with them people on the bird leaving. Do not cut them. Do not cut them. But oh man, and after I finally got out of that damn Humvee, again, you know, nothing hurt. We got over to Doc Flugel, and he was doing his best, bless his soul, to help get everything cleaned up and everything. And it was every time he would get it cleaned off and he would go to get the bandage and put on there, by the time he got back, just from cleaning it off, grabbing the bandage and coming back, my shoulder was already covered in flies.
Oh yeah.
And oh my God, that, you know, nothing hurt, but that right there is what was, I told him, I was like, dude, just hit me with the morphine. I'm tired of these flies. They're aggravating me. And he's like, gotcha, dude.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't remember a whole lot after that, but
I do remember too. Once we got the medevac helicopter in, we were carrying you onto the bird. I remember you saying too. You were like, "Hey, Sergeant Shetler, guess what?" I said, "What?" And you said, "I get to call my mama tonight." I'll never forget
hey,
that.
you remember after they was getting us on the bird, the whoever was carrying the head end of me on the thing
litter.
the stretcher, the litter, they dropped the head end of me. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yep. I'm not sure who.
I want to say it was one or two of our guys and a couple of special forces dudes. They dropped at the end and hit the ground. I was like, "What the hell, man?" But it sucked, but it was all right. You know, I'm still breathing, so
Absolutely.
I ain't gonna cry about it too much. You know, I finally they got us to the hospital, or that little MASH unit there, and I sweet talked one of the little nurses into letting me use the phone. She's like, "Oh, I'm not allowed to do that." And I can't remember what all I told her, but I ended up with a phone, and I ended up calling home, and my dad answered, and I asked him how they were doing and all. You know, everything was cool. You know, of course, I still wasn't really feeling my arm, and nothing else hurt, so I was just talking all calm, cool with my dad, and I asked him what they were up to. He said, "Oh, we're getting ready to go to church here shortly." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Well, you know, I got some news." And he's like, "What's that?" And I said, "I'm coming home." And he's like, "Well, I know you're coming home." He said, "You ain't got but a month left." And I was like, "Well," I said, "That might have been cut a little short." He's like, "What?" He said, "What do you mean?" And I was telling him I got blew up, and oh man, they about flipped. I was like, hold on now, hold on. I said, everything's all right. You know, I pulled one of the Monty Pythons. So it's just a flesh wound. But
Oh man. Yeah,
then,
I'll tell you too, that particular unit too. I mean, just some of my favorite people in the world. Just great leaders. Sergeant Major Lopez, he was a stud. You know, just yeah, it was a awesome group of guys on that
man,
deployment.
I'll tell you that battalion we were in there at 215. I have nothing but love for that battalion. You know, a lot of people join the Army, and you know, their first few months they're already done.
Mm-hmm.
They hate it. They want out. Some of them, there's no extent they won't go to get out. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, that unit made me embrace the Army. You know, I have nothing but love for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all the guys we served with. You know, I feel like everybody there. I feel like that truly felt like a family.
Yeah, it definitely
You know?
was a family unit. It was just Yeah, it was just a stellar unit to be in.
And I mean, if of course, I'm sure I probably won't, but if I ever had to deploy with anybody again, I would want to be with everybody we was with on that deployment, in that unit. That was, I have nothing but love for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd go back with those guys any day.
But I remember not too long after I got off the phone, I think I took a little nap and then I got woke up and they were coming in. And then at the time it was well, the ones that came in were Colonel Albanese and at the time Colonel Milley.
Yep.
And that's when they were given the Purple Heart, and they ended up getting a hold of my parents again. I guess that was supposed to have been the call home, but but Colonel Milley was talking to my dad and all. I don't remember what all was said, but everything went smooth there. And of course, man, I had to, dude, before they could send me to Landstuhl to Germany to the hospital. I was there. I was still in Iraq for like 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Really, because I guess I don't know the whole deal with medical and flights and all that, but apparently your blood level number or something like that has to be at a certain level. Well, they couldn't ever keep my blood up to that level, but finally it got up there, and I guess I caught the first flight out after that. But
Yeah, well, I could see that. You lost a lot of blood. I could definitely see that.
but
Did you have to get any transfers? Blood
yeah,
transfers?
there was 2 or 3 blood transfusions, man.
Was there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I figured that. There was a
I
lot
mean,
of blood loss there.
there was, but I mean, once, like I said, once I finally they got my level up, they was able to send me off to Landstuhl, and I hung out there for a few days, a week, something like that. And they were good people there. They took care of me and all. But
And then from Landstuhl, did you head to Walter Reed?
that's when we went to Walter Reed, yes, sir. And that place right there, like, it's a good hospital. Don't get me wrong; it's a great hospital. They do the best they can with what they got. It's Army money. But, man, I don't know. To me, it ends up being more of a USO place than it does a hospital. I mean, they get a lot of big names come in and see the soldiers, and that's great. Don't get me wrong. That brings morale up and whatnot. But I, it was more of a let's keep everything neat and tidy and all because we've got this star coming in. Like
Mm.
it almost seems like they've got their own people that deal strictly with stars that come through or big names and whatnot. But I mean, the medical staff there at Walter Reed was a-okay. Like I said, they do what they can with Army money.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that stuff like this happens, and unfortunately, they start feeling like there's nothing else left to do or whatnot. And again, I sound like a broken record. Unfortunately, they turn into possibly the 22 a day.
Mm-hmm.
I I had it set in my head real quick, fast and in a hurry that I was not going to be part of that. Of course, at the time, that wasn't a thing. It was a thing. It just wasn't as publicized as it is now.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, uh, no, I couldn't really use my arm that much at the beginning. But I was going to do anything and everything I could with it. To try to get as well as I could.
How long did you end up spending at Walter Reed?
Oh, geez, I was up there at Walter Reed for, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks, somewhere in there.
Okay.
But,
So not
but
too awful long.
no, it wasn't too awful long. And I mean, of course, at the time, I guess the military were able to do that. They ended up getting my parents to come up, and so it wasn't like I was just alone up there.
Mm-hmm.
I had my parents and my little sister up there with me, so
Oh, that's
they
good.
they got to see a lot of what I went through up at the hospital.
Then after a few weeks there, is that when you came? Did you come back to Fort Drum after that?
Well, they put me on convalescent leave. I want to say it was about a month or so, and then that's when after I got done with convalescent leave, that's when I like to say I came back home, back up to Drum. And man, it was the wildest thing. I guess Sergeant Major, all this time while I was in the hospital and on convalescent leave, I'm assuming, I don't know the facts, but what I've always assumed is during that time, Sergeant Major Lopez had just retired, because when I got back, he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, he did retire pretty shortly after we got back. Yeah.
Yeah, it had to have been pretty quick.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a funny story my dad likes to remind me about all the time. When we was still at Walter Reed, I guess that not long after I got there, Sergeant Major was getting ready to leave and come back up there to Drum. But I was off on one of my surgeries, and I guess he had come to my room while I was gone, but my dad was in there, and Sergeant Major had left me a pack of underwear. he said he may need these sometime. but man, it was wild. I remember after I got back to Drum, I don't know, it was different. Like normally different officers, of course, naturally it's yes sir, no sir, whatever, that type situation. Well, I was walking. You remember there was like a basketball court or something like that,
Yep.
right in the middle between the barracks and battalion. I was walking through there one day, and I ended up passing Carl Albanese, and it turned into a, hey Carl, hey Carl, how you doing, this and that. And I was like, well, I mean, this is weird, but you calling me Carl, but I went along with it. Everything was cool and kosher. So, but yeah, I know I spent well, while I was home, I want to say I was on convalescent leave. I ended up getting married. We ain't gonna go into that one, but I ended up coming back up to Drum, and she ended up coming up with me, and we had a place, and we I want to say we stayed there at Drum for probably close to a year, if not a year, and they were working on putting me out on the temporary disability retirement list, that TDRL,
Uh-huh.
and I ended up getting that in June of '06.
Okay. So you got out on the TDRL in June 06, and then like me, because I actually ETS'd in 06 and then decided to come back in a couple years later,
Right.
and we ran into each other again down at Fort Campbell briefly.
We did. I had already been to Afghanistan, and I don't have no big war story for that. I tripped and fell. I ended up hitting my shoulder pretty solid, and they ended up sending me back to Camel from Afghanistan. And I was on it was either battalion or brigade staff duty. It had to have been brigade because you were showing up. And but man, dude, honestly, I about shit myself when I seen you up there. Like that was it was nice to see a familiar face.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember actually the first time I saw you, I had just gotten to Campbell. I hadn't been there all that long. And I was with 327 Infantry at the time. And but I think it was a weekend. I was actually walking around the mall down in Clarksville and happened to see you and your wife coming out of the store. And I almost had to do a double take at first. You know, I wasn't sure. Wait a minute, is that who I think it is? Yeah.
It probably was, man. I done the rest of my little time there at Camel. Well, no, I ended up getting fully medically retired in April of '09, and that was about the same time me and my ex-wife decided to split sheets. I want to say it was January of 2010. I met my current wife, and we've been together ever since. And then, of course, we was in a small town. There ain't a whole lot of jobs. I mean, there's jobs out there, but unless you want to drive half an hour away. But she ended up doing college and got a degree, and she couldn't find anything really to do with her degree. And I kept poking the bear, join the army, join the army, join the army, and she always shrugged it off and called me an asshole for always bringing it up. Well, I'll be damned. I want to say it was March of 2018. She called my bluff. She ended up talking to recruiters, and July of 18, she went into basic. Let's see, when was November of 18, she got her first duty station. We went down to Polk. Man, I tell you what, there's a lot of people that don't like Fort Polk, but I think going out to the box is what gets them.
Oh,
But
yeah.
actually being stationed at Polk, yeah, it gets hotter than sin down there. But gee, I loved it. I'd go back tonight if I could.
Really?
It's really like just the little towns and all outside of Polk. If somebody needs something, everybody's got it. Somebody will let you borrow it. They're just a big family. The towns outside of Polk, and the food is awesome down there. Well, I know when Hurricane Laura come through, and it damaged Polk pretty good. Man, even people you never met before, they're on post. Everybody's helping everybody. It was like the family and the camaraderie ship of outside towns kind of bled into Polk itself, and everybody just helps everybody,
Yeah, because like you said, unfortunately, my only experience with Polk was, JRTC rotations.
Right.
So
Hey, I'll tell you what, too. My wife we was there for 2 years, and she went to the box once. And when she come back, I don't know. I'm sensitive towards my wife, man. I know she lost a good 15 pounds. When she come back, it looked like she wasn't nothing but skin and bones. I almost cried, man. I was almost in tears. But, it is what it is.
And how's she enjoying her time in the Army?
Well, when we were at Polk, she was trying to figure out if she even wanted to stay in or not. And I was like, look, you've got 2 years in, try somewhere else if you want to. Or I said, if you want to get out, I'll have your back. I ain't got no problem with that at all. I said, but, see about somewhere else. Well, our neighbor, of course, you know how military houses are. A lot of them are duplexes.
Mm-hmm.
The neighbor we shared a house with, he was also thinking about getting out too. And I was like, man, what is y'all's deal? You got it made, as far as house goes and benefits and whatnot. We all know how the Army pay is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's shit.
Yeah.
But but I'm talking to both of them, and neither one of them's hearing what I'm saying. They're in one ear and out the other. Well, my neighbor, I was talking to his wife one day. I was like, hey, talk to my wife because she's not trying to hear me. Try to talk her into trying to re-enlist and stay in. We don't have plans if she decides to get out after 2 years. I don't want to go back to the little bitty town we came from. And well, the neighbor lady finally talked to my wife, and my wife decided she was going to re-enlist. So I was like, all right, cool. We got that one knocked out. So now I was talking to my neighbor and trying to get him to stay in. And he's like, oh, no, no. I was like, dude, put in your packet and go to drill school. It seemed like he lit up a little bit. And he was looking into it. And he's like, man, I got everything on. I got everything to qualify for drill school. So, well, hell, put your packet in. Well, sure enough, a couple months later, he got picked up for it. And I was like, hell yeah. So my wife, she ended up having to decide, where she wanted to go, put in her options. And she, at the same time, she was like, I kind of still want to be close to family and whatnot. So I'm over here racking my brain. And I was like, well, if you're wanting to be close to family, you got either Fort Campbell or Fort Leonard Wood. Because her folks would have been pretty well right in between either one of them.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I don't know about Fort Campbell. And I was like, I ain't gonna bullshit you. You don't like to run. Fort Campbell likes to run. and, I said, well, hell, put in for Leonard Wood. Nobody wants Leonard Wood. So if you put in for it, I'm sure you're gonna end up getting it. So she ended up putting in for Leonard Wood, and that's where we're at now. Well, I don't know, few months after we had got here, got a call from the old neighbor. He was informing us he was coming to Leonard Wood too. So it was like, oh hell.
Now,
sure enough, about a month later, he ended up just, not even an eighth of a mile down the road from us. So
now is he a drill sergeant there now?
yeah, he's drill. He's got his emotional support ring on his hat too. But I mean, as far as my wife goes, though, I don't think she's a TRADOC person. Because we got here and she's an 88 Mach. So when we was at Polk, she was busting her ass all the time, trucking people here and there and whatever 88 Machs do.
Mm-hmm.
But we got here and she ended up getting stuffed in an office doing leave forms and per stats and God knows what else. I don't ask. She don't tell. So.
So is she itching to get out of there then?
Yeah. I figured of either of them. I figured Polk would have broke her, but Leonard Wood, she's done. So not this October, but October 23, she's out.
Oh, she's planning on ETS and then.
Yeah, she's done. She's about over it. But I mean, we're closing on a house in 9 days.
I saw that.
Road here from us. So we've got a house bought, and we're going to have at least a year in that house before she gets out of the Army. And then, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to set roots here.
Okay, just plant your roots down there and Lost in the Woods.
You're right. But I mean, my sister, she still lives back home. That's 3-4 hours away. But my dad, he's just 20 minutes up the road from us here.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, he ended up moving this way. Of course, he's got a sister there in Springfield, Missouri, which ain't but 45 minutes, an hour away from him. So he's got other family here as well. And I mean, that's kind of where we're sitting at right now, bud.
And in the meantime, you're just enjoying being an Army spouse.
Right. I'm a dependable, man.
Yeah.
As long as I keep the house clean and make sure supper's about ready when she gets home, she don't have no complaints. And I try to keep the house clean so I can pretty well just spend my day doing whatever I do. I mean, it's mixed blessings, though. I'll tell you what. Of course, like I said earlier, they finally medically retired me back in 2009. And, at the time I wasn't, but I think like 27-year-old.
Yeah.
And Retirement is great if I guess you're old enough for it.
Right.
But being retired that young, you run out of stuff to do quick.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
And
Be careful what you wish for. Everybody thinks they'd love to be
right,
retired, but till it
oh
happens.
man, I'll tell you what, that boredom will hit you hard.
Yeah.
But I
Yes, it
mean,
will.
I'm trying to make the best of it. Coming up on 40 and just hanging out and watching kids grow, man.
Yeah, enjoying the time with the family and
Right.
well, yeah, I think that's probably a good place to end it. Yeah, hey, thanks, brother, for coming on and talking to us today. And yeah, glad to see you and the family are doing well. And yeah, man, it was great talking to you again.
You too, man. I'm greatly appreciative of you hollering at me to do this. It's something new. I'm glad to see that you've got a podcast that's getting ready to take off. I feel like it's going to.
I hope so. So, and if you like this episode, feel free to breach that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the show with your friends so we can continue to grow. Don't forget, you can find our show on our YouTube channel and on Spotify. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you on The Objective.